exams, exam dreams, and related tangents. But first,
Why are we zooming, Lisa?
we are zooming because I was heading up to Joanne's to record today, but my car had other ideas, specifically the accelerator cable, which decided to break on the North Circular Road. Anyway, back to our topic. So why exams?
Because I'm currently writing a book proposal on the subject. The working title is Exam Dreams, and it's prompted by the fact that I'm a sufferer of recurrent exam dreams. A lot of people are. So I noticed that every year around about A levels, you get lots of articles about exam anxiety dreams as the results come up. Although what I've noticed is it tends to be years later that people have them. Sometimes they have them into their 70s or 80s. Now, not everyone does have them. Now, Freud had them and talked about them in interpretation of dreams. And his view was he didn't find them very interesting. They didn't fit with his main thesis about dreams. He thought they just reassured you. He said only people who pass the exams have them. Now, that's not true. I mean, for example, your sister dreams about an A-level exam she remembers failing. So, I know just anecdotally from our own family, that's not true. But I think what really makes me raise my eyebrow at Sigmund a bit is, well, if they're reassuring, why do they feel so horrible?
Do you have an answer to your question?
Not entirely. I think in my case, the exams I often dream about are exams that I did better than I deserved to do, given the amount of work I'd done. Part of what haunts my exam dreams is the thing is that whatever I've been rewarded by, I don't deserve.
Why do you think you don't deserve it?
Um, I think I've just been so supported by other people financially. I
Oh, so you feel you haven't invested enough, but you've invested yourself
Oh
entirely in
goodness.
these things.
Yes, and there's this sort of, I mean, I've left Twitter, but there's this constant imaginary Twitter chorus on my head going, "Oh, you're so privileged," which somehow means that nothing I say is of any value.
And how's the book proposal going?
I've written a sample chapter about Freud and various dream ideas, and also when I was a teenager and when I was having the exams that would provide the fuel for the exam dreams later. And having looked at his life as a quite a pressured upbringing, and mine a similar way. Um, I then move on to ask the question I want to ask the rest of the book is how did we come to be a society that has these kind of anxiety dreams? Because there are some cross-cultural studies of anxiety dreams, and the material in them, as you might expect, varies across cultures.
So what you're actually asking is, in a way, why do we have exams?
Yes, given that they're so horrible, it does feel like a kind of emotional scarring
Hmm.
having this experience at night again and again and again and again. And I think, we treat these exams as if they're just a stage of life, like boys having their voices break or girls having their first period. But actually, no, we decided to put these bloody things in place at some point. How did we decide and why?
There is that. There's also the fact that they don't really measure what they need to measure.
No, they don't. I
I
mean,
mean, yeah,
what
I had, go
what
on.
they measure in my case is the fact that I had a knack for exams. I mean, I didn't get into the civil service anyway. Quite rightly, I would have been awful. But I mean, my ability to pass exams would not fit me, for example, for public office.
In the same way, to be fair, that
Hmm.
being a really good debater does not really fit you for public office.
No, it doesn't. And that's another issue. Everything's so competitive, and it's competitive in the discourse as well. So the idea is the person who wins is the person who wins the argument, not the
Mm.
person who is closest to whatever the most truthful position bit might be, or the most helpful position, or God help us, the most compassionate position.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Getting back to exams, I had a really interesting conversation a couple of weeks back when I
Mhm.
was talking about using a new platform, the ThingLink, the one that we present this on, in assessments for students. And I was talking to someone who works in the medical school, and they were talking about how they assess medical students' knowledge and the difficulty of making sure that they are not colluding and particularly it was an issue during COVID, but difficult of making sure that students are not colluding to answer questions. And it suddenly struck me at that moment, and I sat there and went, do you know what? With my actual doctors, I would far rather they colluded and checked their knowledge with
Mm.
colleagues than that they relied on their memories. And it suddenly struck me in those kind of exams, are we actually training people and teaching people to learn and behave in a way that would be dangerously inappropriate in the field?
Yes, it becomes about losing face and not admitting a lack of knowledge or not admitting you don't know things or not questioning whether the things you've understood to be knowledge really take you that far.
Exactly. I'd much rather have a doctor who wasn't sure about an answer and talked to somebody else about it to check
Mm.
than someone that, because they've done really well on a series of exams, picked partly because they've done so well on these exams.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to me a thing that as autistic people we often find strange, that in conversation in public life, it's about, as Bell Hooks said, it becomes about dominance and winning. And it's more about saving face than it is to getting to the truth.
You learn in most forms of work that a very good answer is, I don't know, but let's find out.
Yes.
And that's never an okay answer in an exam, is it?
Well, it depends on the exam. I studied philosophy, so to some extent you're saying, well, what would this question look like? But you are still in essays, there is still this culture of, I mean, personally, I have kind of sort of, and it would seem, and maybe all over the place in my work because I live in hesitation country. That's just where I come from. But this idea that good style is looking certain, and I can't stand that.
It's also highly gendered,
Hmm.
and women in particular are told to use fewer qualifiers.
Most of the truth is in the qualifiers.
Back to exams, qualifications, and stuff.
That there are different things. There's qualification. How do we know that somebody is fit to do a job? There's assessment, and there are examination. Examination is a form of assessment, and it can be a form of assessment on the way to qualification. There's an unexamined assumption that what is quantified, something you can quantify something, it's more reliable and more objective. And when you try and do that to the sort of subjects that we teach, like creative writing, you realize that's something of a mirage, but it's
It's,
not one that we're willing to let go of.
well, I don't know. I'd be perfectly happy to let go of it, but institutionally, not.
Institutionally, I mean.
Yeah, but also there's something else about changing a system that's built in a particular way without changing the underlying assumptions that it's built on. So you end up with layers and layers and layers of things that are not exams, which are basically built on the assumption that the exam
It's the
is,
gold standard.
or
Yeah.
if not the gold standard, it is the thing
But
that you
actually, it's
build
even
from.
changed since we did it. I mean, I don't remember any open book exams when I was doing them. You just hoovered a load of knowledge up into your head and then you tried to regurgitate it. I mean, in a 3 hour session, and the more I look at it, the more I think how ridiculous. And they also have assessment, sort of ongoing assessment,
Yes, which is also better.
which has its advantages and its disadvantages.
Yes, I mean, I would have been significantly disadvantaged in that situation because I didn't work, but
No,
I had a
I mean,
knack for
similarly,
remembering.
I was
Yeah.
an absolute pantser, and I probably wouldn't have done well with that.
No, I'd have done terribly
Mm.
because I was just good at remembering some things,
Oh,
not
yes,
everything. Again, spiky profile, neurodivergence, could remember enough history and construct interesting arguments.
exactly. I
English,
mean, I could do exams on that.